The world lay in ruins. The sky, once a vibrant stretch of blue, was choked with ash and smoke. The remnants of humanity staggered through broken streets, their faces hollowed by fear and loss. Captain Elias Draven stood amidst the devastation, his uniform torn and smeared with soot, staring at the gutted remains of what had been a bustling city. The bombing had come without warning, a calculated act of cruelty from an enemy they didn't even know existed until their ships darkened the heavens. Elias clenched his fists, his jaw tight as he surveyed the scene. It wasn't just the destruction that gnawed at him. It was the message the aliens had broadcast after the attack. Adorable, watch as we decide your fate, the voice had said, laced with mockery. They thought humanity was weak, insignificant. That single word, adorable, burned in Elias's mind, sparking a fire that no amount of alien technology could extinguish. Behind him, Lieutenant Jonah Reed sifted through the rubble with a scanner in hand. The young scientist's face was smeared with grime, but his eyes burned with determination. Their energy signatures are everywhere, Jonah said, his voice taut. This wasn't just an attack. They wanted to leave their mark, to show us how superior they are. Elias turned to him, his expression unreadable. What do you see? Jonah hesitated, glancing at the blinking readout on his scanner. A pattern, the way they targeted key infrastructure, the precision. It's almost as if they're testing us, pushing to see how we'll react. But I think they made a mistake. Elias arched an eyebrow. A mistake? Jonah nodded, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Their tech, it's advanced, no doubt about it. But they underestimated us. They think we're primitive, incapable of adapting. That arrogance is their weakness. Elias let Jonah's words sink in, his mind already calculating. He turned his gaze to the horizon, where alien ships loomed like predatory birds. We'll use that against them, he said, his tone resolute. A short distance away, Private Marcus Steele stood guard, his rifle at the ready. He was younger than Elias, but his hardened demeanor spoke of a life spent preparing for moments like this. Marcus had been a soldier since he was old enough to hold a weapon, and the sight of his home reduced to rubble ignited a rage he could barely contain. They'll pay for this, Marcus growled, his voice low but fierce. Elias glanced at him, his expression softening for a moment. They will, but not on their terms. We strike smart, not angry. Marcus met his gaze and gave a curt nod, though his grip on the rifle remained tight. I'm ready when you are, sir. The three of them stood there, a small island of resolve amidst the chaos. Each man carried his own burden, his own scars, but together, they formed the beginnings of what humanity needed, a response. Hours later, in the relative safety of an underground command center, Jonah spread out a holographic map of the alien strike zones. The air was thick with tension as the team gathered around. Here, Jonah said, pointing to a cluster of dots. These sites were hit first, almost simultaneously. High population density, strategic resources. But here, he gestured to a more isolated area. The pattern falters. They didn't bomb it as heavily, almost like they didn't see it as a threat. Elias studied the map, his mind racing. What's there? Old military installations, Jonah replied. Decommissioned years ago. But if we can get there, we might find something useful, resources, tech, anything to give us an edge. Marcus leaned over the table, his eyes narrowing. If they didn't hit it hard, they're probably watching it. Could be a trap, or an opportunity, Elias countered. He straightened, his voice firm. We can't sit here waiting for them to finish the job. We need to move. Now, Jonah hesitated. Captain, I know you're right, but we don't know the extent of their surveillance. If they're watching, even a small mistake could. Every moment we hesitate is a moment they gain. Elias cut in, his tone brooking no argument. We'll be careful, but we'll act. Humanity's survival depends on it. The room fell silent as his words settled over them. Jonah nodded reluctantly, and Marcus tightened his grip on his weapon. As the team prepared to move out, a faint tremor shook the ground. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and a distant roar echoed through the tunnels. The aliens were on the move again. Elias's jaw tightened as he turned to his men. "They think we're broken," he said, his voice low but fierce. "They think we're nothing more than insects beneath their boots. But they're wrong. We're going to show them what happens when you push humanity too far." Jonah and Marcus exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. They were ready, whatever came next. As they stepped into the night, the smoldering ruins of the city stretched out before them, a grim reminder of what was at stake. The aliens had delivered their message, but humanity had one of its own. Survival wasn't just instinct. It was a promise. In the distance, the faint glow of alien ships illuminated the horizon. Elias tightened his grip on his rifle, his gaze unwavering. The fight was far from over, but for the first time since the bombing, hope flickered in the darkness. The darkness of the abandoned military installation seemed to breathe as the team moved through its hollow corridors. Dust motes floated in the faint beams of their flashlights, and every sound echoed unervingly in the silence. Captain Elias Draven led the way, his rifle raised, eyes sharp and scanning for movement. Jonah Reed followed close behind, clutching a portable console. His focus split between navigating the labyrinth and monitoring for alien interference. Marcus Steele brought up the rear, his step steady, his weapon ready to fire at the first sign of danger. "This place feels dead," Jonah murmured, his voice low but caring in the stillness. Elias glanced back, his face partially obscured by the dim light. "It's not dead. It's dormant. Stay alert." Jonah swallowed his unease and nodded. The installation had been left untouched for decades, its systems powered down, its purpose forgotten by most. Yet it held the last remnants of humanity's advanced military tech, a faint hope buried in its depths. Jonah's scanner beeped softly, drawing his attention to a nearby terminal. "Here," he said, crouching beside the console. His fingers danced over its surface, bringing the machine to life with a low hum. "I'll need a few minutes to access the systems. If we're lucky, we'll find schematics, weapons caches, maybe even something we can repurpose." Elias nodded but didn't relax. His eyes flicked to Marcus, who stood a few feet away, scanning the shadows. "How are we looking?" "Clear for now," Marcus replied, though his grip on his rifle never eased. "But I don't like this. Feels too quiet." Elias shared the sentiment, but kept it to himself. They didn't have the luxury of second-guessing every risk. Time was against them, and the aliens wouldn't stay idle for long. As Jonah worked, the console screen flickered, displaying a series of encrypted files. His brow furrowed as he began decoding them, his frustration mounting. Their systems were wiped before the installation was abandoned. Most of what's here is corrupted or locked down. But he trailed off, his eyes narrowing at a file marked with an unfamiliar symbol. "What is it?" Elias asked, stepping closer. "I'm not sure," Jonah admitted, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. "It's not military. It looks alien." Marcus stiffened. "Alien? How the hell would that be here?" Jonah didn't answer immediately, his focus on cracking the file. "Maybe an early encounter. Maybe something we recovered and didn't understand at the time. Whatever it is, it's not human." Elias exchanged a glance with Marcus, tension rippling between them. "Can you open it?" "I can try," Jonah replied, his tone grim. "But if they're tracking their own tech, this could send up a flare." Elias weighed the risk before nodding. "Do it. We're already on borrowed time." Jonah's fingers moved with precision, bypassing layers of security, until the file opened with a sharp beep. The console screen shifted, displaying a series of holographic blueprints alongside a stream of alien text. Jonah's eyes widened as he scanned the data. This is incredible," he whispered. "It's a holographic projection system. They must have left it behind or overlooked it when they bombed us. If we can replicate this..." Marcus cut him off. How does it help us fight them? Jonah shot him a look. It doesn't just project. It deceives. We could make them see what we want them to see, lure them into traps, confuse their targeting systems. This could turn the tide. Before Elias could respond, a low rumble reverberated through the insulation. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the distant sound of heavy machinery echoed through the corridors. "They're here," Marcus growled, his rifle snapping to his shoulder. Elias cursed under his breath. "Jonah, grab what you can and move. Marcus, cover the exit." Jonah scrambled to transfer the data onto his console, his hands shaking as the rumble grew louder. Marcus moved to the corridor's entrance, his sharp eyes scanning the dim light. He spotted movement, a shimmering distortion, almost imperceptible, creeping closer. "Contact!" Marcus barked, firing a burst into the distortion. Sparks erupted as the rounds connected, revealing a sleek, spider-like alien drone. The creature let out a metallic screech before collapsing, but more shapes flickered into view behind it. Elias took position beside Marcus, his rifle joining the fight. "Jonah, now would be a good time. I'm almost done," Jonah shouted, his voice strained. The console beeped as the transfer completed, and he yanked the device free. "Got it. Let's go." Elias and Marcus fell back, covering Jonah as he bolted down the corridor. The drones pursued, their mechanical limbs skittering over the walls and ceiling, their energy weapons firing bursts of light that scorched the walls around them. "Faster," Elias ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. The team sprinted through the maze-like insulation, the drones closing in despite their efforts to slow them down. Marcus paused at an intersection, planting a grenade before following the others. The explosion rocked the corridor, the shockwave buying them precious seconds. They reached the exit, a jagged opening in the side of a cliff overlooking a dark forest. Elias motioned for Jonah and Marcus to go ahead while he turned to fire one last burst at the pursuing drones. He hit two more, but their numbers were overwhelming. "Elias, move!" Marcus shouted from the edge of the forest. Elias fired a final shot before retreating, the team disappearing into the shadows of the trees. The drones hesitated at the edge, their glowing eyes scanning the darkness, but they didn't follow. Instead, they retreated, their mission seemingly incomplete. Breathing heavily, the team regrouped a safe distance away. Jonah clutched the console like a lifeline, his face pale but resolute. "That was close," he said, his voice trembling. Elias nodded, his expression grim. "Too close. But we've got what we need." Marcus glared back at the distant installation, his jaw tight. "They know we're not giving up. They'll come harder next time." "Let them," Elias said, his voice low but fierce. He looked at Jonah. "Can you make that system work?" Jonah hesitated, then nodded. "It'll take time, but yes. We can turn it into something they won't expect." "Good," Elias replied, his tone unwavering. "Because this isn't just about survival anymore. They called us adorable. Now they'll see what that really means." The team's resolve hardened in the quiet of the forest, the distant hum of alien ships a reminder of the battles yet to come. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and on the brink of extinction. But they were human, and that, Elias knew, was their greatest strength. The alien fleet hung in the sky like a jagged scar, its silent presence a constant reminder of the power humanity was up against. Captain Elias Draven stood at the edge of the makeshift command center, his gaze fixed on the monitors displaying their final plan. His face was hard, his thoughts a mix of calculation and resolve. They had prepared for this moment with every scrap of ingenuity and determination they could muster. Now, it was time to strike back. Behind him, Lieutenant Jonah Reed worked feverishly at his station, the holographic interface flickering under his rapid commands. The alien projection system they had salvaged from the military installation was now fully operational, modified to amplify its capabilities. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a tool to rewrite the battlefield, to turn the alien strength against them. "We're live," Jonah announced, his voice tight with concentration. "The decoys are online and the system is stable. I've set them to simulate multiple human fleets converging on their positions. It should keep them guessing." Elias nodded, his focus unbroken. "And the fail-safes?" Jonah hesitated for a fraction of a second. "In place. But if they detect the ruse, it won't hold for long. We'll need to move fast." "We will," Elias said firmly. His attention shifted to Private Marcus Steele, who stood by the weapons cache, checking his gear one last time. Marcus was a wall of silent determination, his every movement precise and deliberate. "Ready?" Elias asked. Marcus looked up, his eyes cold and unflinching. "Always." The plan was simple in theory but perilous in execution. While the holographic fleets drew the aliens away, Elias and his team would infiltrate the mothership, the nerve center of the invasion. If they could disable its command systems, they could cripple the entire fleet. It was a gamble, but humanity had nothing left to lose. The transport vehicle hummed softly as it carried them toward their target, the sound barely audible over the tension filling the cabin. Jonah adjusted his equipment, his hands trembling slightly. Marcus sat across from him, sharpening his knife with slow, deliberate strokes. "You nervous, Reed?" Marcus asked, breaking the silence. Jonah glanced up, forcing a weak smile. "Would it make you feel better if I said no?" Marcus smirked faintly. "Not really." Elias cut in, his tone calm but firm. "Focus. We've got one shot at this, and it has to count. No second chances." The transport slowed as it approached the outskirts of the alien fleet's staging area. Jonah activated the projection system, and shimmering holograms of human ships materialized in the sky, their presence an illusion designed to draw the aliens' attention. As expected, the enemy responded. Alien vessels shifted their formations, moving to intercept the phantom fleets. The path to the mothership began to clear, though the risk remained high. The team disembarked quickly, their movements precise and synchronized. The alien mothership loomed above them, its massive structure bristling with weapons and defenses. Jonah activated a second projection, this one cloaking their approach in a veil of invisibility. They moved silently through the shadow of the behemoth, each step calculated and cautious. The air hummed with the alien energy coursing through the mothership's systems, a constant reminder of the danger surrounding them. Inside, the corridors were cold and sterile, illuminated by an eerie green light. Jonah led the way, his console guiding them toward the central command hub. Marcus brought up the rear, his weapon at the ready, his eyes scanning for threats. "Hold," Elias whispered, raising a hand. They froze as a patrol of alien drones passed by, their mechanical limbs clicking against the metal floor. The team remained perfectly still, their breaths shallow, until the drones disappeared around a corner. Jonah exhaled quietly, his voice barely audible. "We're close. Just a few more turns." They reached the command hub, a massive chamber filled with alien consoles and holographic displays. At its center stood Vornak, the alien commander, his towering form radiating authority. His 4 eyes scanned the room, his hands manipulating streams of data as he orchestrated the invasion. Elias signaled for Jonah and Marcus to take their positions. Jonah moved to a nearby console, beginning the process of disabling the ship systems, while Marcus covered him from a vantage point. Elias stepped into the open, his rifle trained on Vornak. "Turn around," he said coldly. Vornak froze, his body tense, before slowly turning to face the intruder. His eyes narrowed as he regarded Elias, a flicker of disdain crossing his features. "You," he said, his voice a guttural rumble. The resilient little creatures who refused to die. Adorable. Indeed, Elias didn't flinch. "This ends now." Vornak tilted his head, a predatory smile curling his lips. "Does it? Your kind is resourceful, I'll admit, but your efforts are futile. You cannot hope to challenge us. "We already are," Elias replied, his voice steady. Jonah's fingers moved faster, sweat beading on his forehead as he bypassed the alien security protocols. The system resisted, its defenses adapting with every step, but Jonah pushed through, driven by sheer determination. Vornak's eyes flicked toward the consoles, realization dawning. He moved to intervene, but Marcus stepped out of the shadows, his rifle aimed squarely at the alien's chest. "Not so fast," Marcus said, his tone deadly. Vornak hesitated, his gaze shifting between the humans. "You are brave, but bravery alone will not save you." "Maybe not," Elias said, his voice like steel. "But it's enough to stop you." Jonah let out a triumphant gasp as the console emitted a sharp beep. "Got it," he shouted. "The system's down." The mothership shuddered as its systems faltered, lights flickering and alarms blaring. Vornak roared in fury, lunging toward Elias. But Marcus's shot rang out, striking the alien and sending him crashing to the floor. "Move!" Elias ordered, and the team bolted from the chamber as explosions rippled through the ship. The projections outside flickered and disappeared, revealing the true extent of the chaos as the alien fleet fell into disarray. They reached the extraction point as the mothership began to collapse, its immense form breaking apart under its own weight. The transport carried them to safety, the distant explosions lighting up the night sky like fireworks. Elias sat silently, staring at the destruction. Jonah slumped in his seat, exhausted but alive, while Marcus cleaned his weapon with quiet efficiency. "Is it over?" Jonah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elias didn't answer immediately. He looked out at the horizon, where the remnants of the alien fleet were retreating into the void. "For now," he said finally, "but they'll be back." Marcus nodded, his expression grim. "And we'll be ready." The transport descended toward the remains of humanity's stronghold, where survivors waited with cautious hope. Elias stepped out, his gaze sweeping over the battered faces that looked to him for leadership. "They thought we were weak," he said, his voice carrying over the crowd. "They thought we were insignificant. But we've shown them what humanity is capable of. And if they come back, we'll show them again." The crowd erupted in cheers, their resilience rekindled. Elias stood tall, his team by his side, as the first rays of dawn pierced the sky. Humanity had survived, and it would fight again.